Hey, what's up, y'all? It's your boy Jeremy from Randolph Running Club, and I'm back again with another video today to talk to you guys about just kind of the gear that I shoot with and kind of what my process is like to a certain extent, you know, when I'm making these videos, and just any of the various content that you see if you follow me on, obviously here, YouTube, Instagram. You might see some of my videos on Strava, but anywho, yeah, let's just talk about that, right? So I'm going to be talking about kind of two main things today. It'll be GoPro and Insta360. Those are the two main cameras that I use. But I guess let's just get started right from the beginning. Why do I even record in the first place? I actually started filming myself on runs in 2020, you know, kind of the height of the pandemic. I found myself with a ton of time just, you know, as we all were at home watching videos on YouTube. And, you know, I started getting into running more and more as it was just a great way for me to get outside and kind of, you know, just get to be moving, get to be free and out of the confines of my small New York apartment at the time. And I started watching a ton of Seth James Damore videos, Kafuzi, Jamie's reviews, so like Jameson Michael, those guys, right? I feel like are really pioneers for me. And I just really was inspired by them. They made great content. And I said, hey, you know, maybe I should go and film myself. I'm running 12 miles at a time, you know, 15 miles. I'm running across the Brooklyn Bridge and doing all these things. So I said, you know, I want to see how this looks for me, you know, selfishly, right? Like I want to see my own content and, you know, just kind of get to relive some of these really fun runs that I've gone on, but I also want to be able to inspire others and kind of show them the things that I've been doing. So, you know, I said, what the heck, let's give it a shot. So how I actually started was I started off with the DJI Osmo Pocket, which if you guys remember my first like year or so of videos, that was all I was shooting on. And it was a great camera. Honestly, it still is a great camera. I still have it. I find that it got really crisp, just beautiful footage, 4K, 60 frames per second, really nice. It was very solid, good battery life. But my main gripe with that camera was that it used a gimbal for image stabilization, which is great, right? So it had amazing low light performance, better than anything like a GoPro or even an Insta360, because it's using a physical means for stabilizing the lens. But the biggest problem with that was its greatest feature, if you will, was its biggest drawback, because anytime I had that in my hand, especially on a run, I was thinking, man, if I drop this thing and I break that gimbal, this is gonna be a useless camera. It never happened in a year. I mean, granted, I feel like I'm a very careful person with those kind of things, but still, it was something that was always kind of on my mind. And it wasn't actually water resistant. So, you know, kind of rewinding here, I moved from New York to Miami during the pandemic, and if you know anything about Florida, it rains like every single day, maybe only for 10 minutes, 15 minutes, but you just never know, and it might rain while you're out on a run. And I typically, you know, if it is raining, I don't mind getting a little bit wet. So I needed a camera that I could really take with me in that kind of environment. And unfortunately, the DJI Osmo Pocket just wasn't gonna fit the bill for me long term there. So now, fast forward to now, living in California, it does rain here every now and again too. So I said, you know what, I'm gonna use two cameras primarily almost 3 years later into this journey. So the main camera I'm using and what I'm actually filming this video and any of the videos you've seen in the last year on is this GoPro Hero 10. So the GoPro, I use it with a very cheap Amazon selfie stick. It's the HSU selfie stick. I believe you can still buy it there, but if you've seen Kafuzi's videos, you notice that these kind of sticks, it's like the company's kind of disappearing into thin air. They're there one day and gone the next. I've seen that this company's been around for a while, and I found that it's a really quality selfie stick. So check that out, that's HSU. And you know, it allows me to get some really good distance. It uses the normal finger mounts that the GoPro has, and it just gets you better perspectives basically. But what I'll say about the GoPro is most of the footage that I film for the channel is gonna be on the GoPro. It has amazing clarity and just the kind of brilliance of the photos, right, and videos. I think the colors are very bright and vibrant, but they're still accurate, which is great. It's very pleasing to the eye, great HDR. I think like when I was running the Berlin Marathon, for instance, you could just kind of got to see how fluffy those clouds looked and stuff in the distance. I found that this camera really does a phenomenal job of just capturing all those various details and not overblowing the sky or having too much exposure, things of that nature. So amazing video footage. And what I really like about the GoPro is that it does 4K footage at 120 frames per second. So for what that means for in layman's terms is that I can slow down my 4K footage by 4x and it still looks really smooth. It doesn't look all choppy. Whereas on the DJI Osmo Pocket, 4K 60 frames, I could only slow it down about half speed. Anything more than that and it started to look kind of jittery, kind of stuttery. So if you want really nice cinematic looking footage for your run videos, I would say the GoPro is definitely the leader there. I do think there's other cameras that are great. The DJI Osmo Action 3 or 2, all of them, that line kind of have similar performance. So, you know, there's other games in town, but I use a GoPro, so I'm talking about GoPro. So yeah, pretty hard to beat there. And what I really like about the GoPro as well, it's just tough as nails. I mean, you see all the videos with guys, you know, jumping off of ships and stuff and skydiving with these cameras. They put them on their car, on the outside of the car to get great video footage. And it's just, I think that's really a testament to the build quality of the GoPro, which is probably what sets it apart the most from its competitors. It feels indestructible, honestly. And even if you do drop the GoPro, the lens is replaceable, so you're not gonna actually mess up your shooting lens, which is obviously the most important part of the camera. Everything on it is like replaceable. It's completely water resistant. So it's just a really sturdy, great camera. Excuse me, and I think that really is something that GoPro needs to be praised for, is just the build quality is top notch. But what I will say, nothing is perfect, of course, right? Like on Earth, it just is what it is. And I've had some frustrating quirks with GoPro in the year or so that I've been using it. That's caused me to lose some good footage or not be able to get the footage I wanted at the time. So one thing for me that's a really big thing and kind of drove me to even search for another camera in the first place was I had an issue with GoPro for the first year and I just figured out how to solve this issue. So if you're having the same thing, hopefully I can help you today. But the camera would constantly be searching for connected devices. So I can control the GoPro from my Coros watch, I can control it on my phone, various other things. If you have a remote control, you can do that. And what I found was if I left the wireless connections on, as soon as I went outside on a run, after the first time I turned the camera on, I'd turn it off and it would just power back on and it would just get in this constant loop where like every 5 minutes I would have to turn it off. And if I didn't look, the screen would just be on, just wasting battery. So to give you kind of a practical example of how that kind of hurt me, when I was running the Berlin Marathon, I started off, I had the camera 4K, 120 frames per second, you know, and that should have easily got me through, you know, a 4-hour marathon, no problem. But what I found was after the first like couple, 2 or 3 shots that I took after I started, every time I looked down at the camera, no matter what I did, I pulled the battery, I put it back in, but the screen would always just turn back on and the camera would just be in the on mode, just wasting battery. So when I got to about the halfway point, I was already down to like, I think 30-something%. So I had to start changing settings and stuff. I went to like 1080p and a super wide view and less stabilization and all these different things to try and just eke out that little bit of extra battery. And when I finished the race, I think the camera had less than 10%, and it had gotten to the point where when I started recording stuff, it would shut off by itself because it had such a low battery. And it was just really frustrating because I knew that I had enough. I started the day on 100% and I took maybe, you know, 30 shots, like 30 seconds each. Like it wasn't a good experience because I know the battery can last longer and they advertise the battery as lasting longer than that, but because of a software glitch, it was causing me that problem. So if you're running through that problem, I just figured out how to stop it. You turn off your wireless connections and then the camera is fine and you're able to record, hit your quick capture off, and it won't turn back on after. So remember that wireless settings, turn off all wireless connections, and once you want to connect it back to your phone or whatever other Bluetooth device, you can turn that back on as you need to. But pretty frustrating. And it also, one other thing that I don't like about the GoPro, and I think it's just pretty wonky, it just does some weird stuff in cold weather with included battery. For instance, I was running and it was like, I think 40 degrees one morning, maybe in the upper 30s, and the camera would start turning itself off once it got to about 40% battery, and it would tell me when it turned off, oh, insufficient battery, low battery warning, whatever. And to me, that's just kind of inexcusable. Like, if your phone did that at 40%, you'd be really upset and you'd return the phone. But for some reason, I think people are such like blind followers of GoPro that they'll just kind of accept these issues. Super frustrating. But ironically, if you buy the Enduro battery, which costs more on top of the battery that came with the camera, that battery doesn't have those issues in the cold, which makes me think, why didn't GoPro just package that battery as the standard one? Like, if the standard one is such junk in hot and cold environments, it basically needs to be in a lab for you to get the optimum performance, which is absurd. So, moral of the story, I like the GoPro. I know I just complained and moaned about it for a while, but the GoPro is pretty great. It makes amazing content, and definitely if you want that cinematic, just silky looking, vibrant colors, I think GoPro is kind of the best game in town, but there are some little issues that you don't have to necessarily deal with other cameras. I never had these problems with DJI, and one big thing with GoPro is I think it's a great thing to start with. I mean, it's the kind of the de facto action camera, but in the year since I've used it, I feel like I've kind of mastered the shots that I can get with it. I think I've made all the content that I can make with this style of camera, which kind of led me to my next thing, which is the Insta360 One X2, which I recently picked up. It was kind of my gift to myself after finishing the Berlin Marathon and not quitting on that when it got hard at the end. And as the name implies, it's a 360-degree camera. I believe it uses two 200-degree lenses, or 210-degree, I can't remember, on each side. So it has two actual lenses that are constantly recording when you hit capture. And it basically captures a spherical 360-degree video, so you don't miss any portion of the action that you're shooting. And basically with the camera, I can show you guys, since I'm not actually recording on this one, I have it in this little protective pouch, which I always keep it in because the lenses are very fragile. But yeah, I just use the camera on the standard Insta360 selfie stick, the invisible one, and I extend it out when I want to take a video. And when I don't, I just slap it right back down and run with it like that. And I think if you follow me on Instagram, you'll definitely see, I don't think I've posted anything on YouTube just yet using the 360 camera in 360-degree mode. I've used it in the standard single lens, but I shoot all my reels with this video camera. I think the picture quality isn't quite as high as the GoPro. The colors are a little bit more muted, a little bit more dull. The camera, if you want that really, really silky, smooth, slow motion, it can only do that in 3K, so you can slow it down 4x if it's in 3K at 100 frames per second, but the footage ends up being kind of grainy once you shrink it from the 360 down to something that's like a flat video that you can post or put on YouTube or whatever. So I typically use it at 4K and 50 frames per second, so I can get that half speed slowdown, which isn't ideal for some of the shots that I want. I don't think it's quite as dramatic as what I can get with the GoPro. But with that being said, I know I just complained a little bit, but I do think that the Insta360 has kind of given me a second wind, I guess, with like my creativity. I think definitely after a while with the GoPro, you're kind of limited on the shots you can do. It's just, you only have one lens that's pointed in one direction at any given time, and you have to be very intentional on what you point at. But what I love about the Insta360 is, especially when I'm running, it kind of takes my mind off of the camera. Aside from the fragility of it, right? But when I'm using the Insta360, I kind of point it vaguely in the direction of what I want. And I know that after I hit that shutter button, I'm getting everything that's in that general vicinity, right? I can get myself in the shot, my whole body. It looks like there's a drone following me. I can get these crazy overhead shots or something that makes me look like I'm in like a GTA video game or something. It's just really impressive, and I think the shots that you can get there they just kind of expand your creative freedom. This camera, if you can think of the shot, you can probably capture it with this if you have enough skill or time or whatever, or you just practice it, right? And I'm still honestly a newbie to it. I just got this in October, so I haven't been running with it for super long, but I've definitely every single run, I feel like I'm finding a new way, creative way to shoot, and just something new that I can do. So the only, and also just one more thing to add, another positive is I think the app is really easy to use. It does add a couple minutes to your flow. If you're like trying to put out the content quickly, I think the GoPro, nothing can beat that, right? Because you point it and whatever you have on that camera is what you got after. With the Insta360, you're gonna have to reframe and post. So that might add, an extra 5 to 10 minutes of editing overall. But at the end of the day, every single shot that you take with the Insta360 is probably a usable shot. Whereas if I'm taking stuff with the GoPro, I might use something just because I have it on there, but I might have been like, oh, my shoe was a little bit out of frame, or oh, I wish I was more in the center of this, etc., etc. I think with the Insta360, no matter what, you're always gonna get something that, if you're creative enough or you're willing to spend a couple extra minutes, you can reframe that shot and make it whatever you want it to be, basically, as long as you have something relatively interesting in the foreground, background, etc. So the main drawbacks on the Insta360, like I mentioned, the extra workflow, the camera doesn't quite get the same crisp video quality as the GoPro. 4K on the Insta360 is not really 4K. Video ends up coming out at like 1080p because you're compressing down that big spherical video file into something that's flat and can be actually used on another platform. So, there's that. And then, the other thing is, and I kind of touched on this before, is the fragility of the camera. Like, it is durable in the sense that it's water resistant. I think the X2 was the first one from that company that was 360 and water resistant. The One X was not, for sure. But the lenses can be very easily scratched, which is why, as you see here, I have it in this protective pouch. If I'm not running with this, it is inside of a pouch, or I have a lens cap guard that goes over it, like a plastic one. But I guess what I'm trying to say is here, the lens covers are not actually replaceable. So if you scratch those, you need a whole new camera, and that's like pretty scary when you're spending, $400, $300, whatever it is. I got this secondhand, so I didn't spend super high amount. And now that the X3 has come out, it's a little bit cheaper, but regardless, if you scratch it, you need a new camera, because forever that's gonna be in your stitch line. It's gonna be in your shots. And you can Google what that looks like. It doesn't look great. It's not gonna make you feel good about taking this camera out to shoot video once that happens. So you have to be very careful. But aside from that, I think the camera's been really bug-free. I haven't had any of the issues that I mentioned, like with the GoPro. Battery life is phenomenal. If I go out on a 12-mile run like I did with this camera a few days ago, and I take, however many shots, 20 shots or something, I'm still at like 80% after the run. Like I could run probably 2 marathons with this camera and I wouldn't have an issue, which is amazing with the stock battery. So I think that's a super big pro. Now, I want to close this video out. I've been talking a ton, and I hope you guys have found this interesting. If you like this, feel free to subscribe, like the video, drop a comment. I'd love to talk to you guys about it. But my last point, I just want to say, what would I get if I was starting out, right? If I was starting all over, I've been through the DJI Osmo Pocket, I've had the GoPro Hero 10, and now the Insta360 One X2. So I'm kind of torn. I think if you watch some other YouTubers' videos, they're gonna say, hey, you should get a GoPro, it makes sense, right? Just get the standard action camera. I don't think it's that clear cut, and I'm a little bit torn because I love the GoPro and I love that style. And I think for me and the type of videos I make, I kind of need both cameras to really maximize my content. But I think the Insta360 X2 or X3, don't get the One X, but the X2 or the X3, I think as your first camera might make sense. And I'll tell you why. I think with these cameras, you can get 90 to 95% of the shots that you get from a GoPro. Like, you can get every single shot minus the, super slow cinematic views. You can still do slow motion, but you're just not getting, 4X, 8X slow motion, right? And even though you're missing that, you're still getting, not, like I said, 90, 95% of the shots that you can get. But a standard action camera like a GoPro will never give you that cool third-person drone-like footage that you can get from a 360 camera. So I think, if you're anything like me, you might not be, but if you're anything like me, if you get the GoPro first or standard action camera, I can almost guarantee that you will take, whatever footage you take with that. And if you decide that you like taking videos when you're on runs, you're gonna hit a plateau where you're gonna feel kind of bored, and you're gonna want to get something different. And what you're gonna end up doing is probably buying a 360-degree camera. So for me, it almost makes sense, like, why not just start off with the 360? And if you really find that you need to make some kind of crazy cinematic footage at some point, or you're doing shoe reviews or whatever, product reviews, where you need something that's a little bit higher quality even than the 360 can give, which it's not bad, it's just you need something even a step above, then, maybe you pick up a GoPro Hero 8 or something like that, and you use that as kind of your B-roll or something, right? But I digress. I think for me, if I was starting right now, based on the 3 cameras I've had, I probably would just get the Insta360 and call it a day, and that would be kind of the end of it for me. So you can let me know your thoughts in the comments. Definitely feel free to subscribe, like I mentioned, and grab a camera, get shooting, have fun out there. And of course, as always, stay blessed, inspire others, and stay safe out on your runs. Take it easy, and I'll see you next time. Peace.